Oh, disclaimer. Look, I almost didn't put this video out. It's not my usual kind of content and it's so controversial, but eventually that's why I decided I had to put it out. You'll see I talk in the video how I feel like we are being browbeaten into saying that there cannot be any possible nuance in this situation at all, and I for one resent that quite a lot. On top of that, it does kind of feed into how political narratives are formed and the content I've been making on Hannah Arendt. So here is the video. But please let me repeat the disclaimer I made last time I spoke on this subject. Whoever you are watching this, I want your life to get happier, safer and richer in all the ways you want it to. And I realize that this is not practicably possible for every person simultaneously as we speak at this time, but at least if we can have some notion of universal compassion in our dialogue, then maybe, just maybe, that would be a good thing. And with that in mind, please enjoy the video. Oh, hello internet, and I'd like to tip my hat to my favourite centrist heterodox movie critic here on YouTube for the title inspiration, although of course that does not mean that they in any way endorse the opinions I'm about to express. I responded the other day to a poll on YouTube by an independent journalist called Andrew Gold. This is the poll in question, and personally I think it is somewhat contentious in its phrasing, although I do want to say up front, I've watched some of Andrew Gold's work, I think he's a person with integrity, and I see this poll as rather cheekily provocative than anything else. I saw some comments saying that he was allowing his bias as a Jewish man to show through, and even if we grant that this is possible and understandable, and some of his responses suggest that might be the case, nonetheless, I do not consider this poll to be in bad faith. So I commented other, and this is what I wrote. Oh, cute one, Andrew. I think it misses some nuance, but what's a YouTube poll to do, eh? I think that university administrators are supposed to enable free speech, and in walking that line, they will feather it. Combine this with calling for genocide. A broad brush is often used here. Do you count From the River to the Sea as calling for genocide? I know some do, and certainly it can be used with genocidal intent, but no, those words do not mean that in every context, and some of that is important here too. Personally, I don't care about the ideologies at this point, I care about the raw number of dead people. But apparently that means I've become more anti-Semitic than I was last year, and I am angry about that too. And I am seethingly furious at the boneheaded zeal of extremists on both sides and the power brokers who are enabling all this. Sorry, that got away from me a bit. Great question, Andrew. Genocide is worse than misgendering. Is that what I was supposed to say? Looking back, I think that the concept of feathering the line is maybe a little bit obtuse. I meant to say that the university administrators will struggle to walk the line precisely, and therefore they will most of the time be one side or the other of it in reality. Furthermore, their attempts to do this in real time, such as in the hearings we saw, these will come off as evasive and possibly even disingenuous, but it is not right to infer their position from that fact alone. That second paragraph, I will say, did kind of come unbidden, but I let it pass QC because it came from the heart. I am angry that nuance is being deliberately and actively destroyed by both sides of this argument, and I have spoken at length about why this is the case. With regard to the poll itself, though, I'm obviously a little brash, but I didn't think this was anything too extreme. I'm calling out the cheeky framing, but I respect the underlying point. Anyway, this commenter clearly disagreed, coming in with a double-barreled comment. In what context exactly would you consider that phrase to not have underlying genocidal implications? Because the word genocide isn't in there? Because while the person uttering the phrase may be too daft to understand the implication, the people who the phrase is directed towards generally do understand its implication. If a slogan is co-opted by literal terrorists with genocidal intentions, wouldn't a rational person maybe try to think of a new slogan? LOL. Shouldn't we respect the feelings of those who, quite rightfully, may be fearful upon hearing it, considering those were, actually facing and experiencing a genocide just a generation or two prior? And considering Hamas, who was elected by the Palestinians, were founded with a stated purpose of the eradication of Jews in Israel, would you say context matters for other hateful slogans too, or just this one? Before I get on to the second one, Yes, Hamas was elected by the Palestinians, and I do think that that was a bad move. Nonetheless, under the situation they were in, much like the Americans who elected Trump, who is also a bad guy, they were just looking for something different. They made a bad call, but desperate people do that surprisingly often. Moving on though. You care about the raw number of dead people. Amount of dead people is your moral barometer, so whichever side has more deaths is the good side. I mean, I wouldn't say that this is exactly what I'm saying, but I would certainly say that it's a contributing factor. The side that deserves your support via snarky YouTube comments, who's being snarkier here? That's a pretty lazy way of viewing things and doesn't actually have much to do with which side is morally in the right, but whatever suits your bleeding heart, I suppose. If I think that death is bad, then naturally the number of deaths will contribute to who I think is morally in the right. Yes. So I've had a pretty bad month, I'll be honest, and so this is not my proudest moment of conciliatory comment work. I gave a double-barreled response in return. Coming in hot there, Chief. Here's one context. Wouldn't it be nice if both peoples with historical ties to the region had contiguous states that weren't being constantly eroded? Spare me the outrage. There was no Hamas until the Palestinians realized that their land was only going to keep shrinking. And Bibi props them up, Hamas that is, because they serve his power. The Christians created Israel to say sorry for the Holocaust. The Jews do have actual historic ties to the land, so it might have worked if the original damn borders had actually meant something. But once the Arabs saw that they didn't, they were bound to resist, and the Christians knew it. So again, to jump in there, I've used a broad brush myself by using Arabs, Christians, Jews as denoters. Obviously, I'm not talking about every member of that group, and I suppose maybe it would have been better for me to be clearer about this in the way I wrote the comment, looking back. However, my response to his comment about my judging of the raw number of dead people: every death is a person with a life and ideas in their head. If the Israeli civilians who were massacred have fundamental dignity, then so do Palestinian ones. I have my principles, thank you very much. And my comment is quite clear that this is a difficult situation. I am sure that you have found rationalizations to dehumanize whosoever you choose and then decided never to question your beliefs. So really, who is the lazy thinker here? I hope your life is a happy one, but I'm done talking to you now. But they weren't down and out, no, coming back with a fake conciliatory tone which is rather belied by their earlier comments, I feel. I agree it would be lovely if they could all get along, but we don't live in a utopia. No, of course not. Utopias are impossible. No one ever suggested that. But we are at least trying to find a way to make the lot of humanity generally better overall, aren't we? One side has been willing to concede for peace time and time again, and one side is not. No, taking more land and then expecting people to be okay with it is conceding nothing. And you obviously knew it was antagonistic, you being the administrations of Israel, not this commenter specifically. If Hamas laid down its arms, there would be peace. If Israel laid down its arms, they would be eradicated and expelled from the area. This is a black and white fallacy. I will say more on this in a moment. Palestinians have caused disruption and unrest even in surrounding Arab nations, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, Kuwait, etc., etc. Why do you think these countries aren't willing to accept any Palestinian refugees now? You should look into what the PLO did in some of these countries in the past. Extremist ideology is prevalent and generational at this point. I'll say more on this as well, but to be fair, I could probably know quite a lot more about what various extremist ideologies have done in various parts of the world, as could this commenter, I don't doubt. However, I don't do that because 1, I have another life to lead, 2, I have mental health to protect, and 3, this has absolutely nothing to do with what is happening right now and the raw number of dead people. I feel for the innocent Palestinians, of course. No doubt there are many. Why do I get the impression you do actually doubt that? But there is no easy solution, and Israel has a right to protect itself regardless of the cowardly tactics Hamas uses to garner international support. Israel does have a right to protect itself. I've always said this and never claimed otherwise. And then, of course, how they closed it all out. Well, the truth can be uncomfortable when you're indoctrinated by propaganda, so of course you'd want to disengage and hold on to your preconceived notions. No worries, I am just fine, thank you. Have a lovely weekend. No hard feelings. I didn't rise to that little bit of sophistry at the end. There is clearly no point. And I felt the urge to, I will admit, so clearly I let them get to me a little bit. But this person is fairly obviously a troll. That last little bit does kind of prove it. If they had actual genuine feelings on the subject, they wouldn't have been able to switch gears so easily into that kind of rhetorical, well, clearly you're the one who's in bad faith here. The alternative, of course, is that they are one of those people with whom I am seethingly furious. And so I think actually I was fairly polite overall. I don't believe that their hand-wringing is sincere, and just to address the putting down your arms defense, this is a black and white fallacy. No one is saying that Israel cannot defend itself and be supported in that. And as for the extremist ideology is endemic in Palestine, I wonder how that could have happened if it is true, and how it could be propagated if it continues to be true. There will of course be nuance and blame to go around. I've never said otherwise, but it seems no honest dialogue is possible with comments like this. Equally though, of course, it is true that there is no honest dialogue possible with radical anti-Semites either, especially those in Hamas. My problem is that increasingly it seems that the belief in dialogue is being eroded. We are being browbeaten into believing that it must be black and white when it never is. There is an excellent skit by Marcus Brigstock from many years ago.
Hello, I'd like to start this week with a request, and this one goes out to the followers of the three Abrahamic religions, to the Muslims, Christians and Jews. It's just a little thing really, but do you think that when you've finished smashing up the world and blowing each other to bits and demanding special privileges while you do it, do you think maybe the rest of us could sort of have our planet back? I wouldn't.
Just to give the scariest example of this, there are people in the US government who believe that Israel's conquest of Palestine will bring on the end times. The fucking end times! But oh no, I am the one with the dangerous ideas here. I am the one that is deserving of scorn and condescending derision. Okay. Some other people interacted on the thread. I won't go into that. I received only one more direct reply, but I'd moved on by then. I apologise up front if I misunderstood your comment. Apology accepted, thank you. But did you mean to say it's anti-Semitic only once you see dead Jew bodies? No, I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry if that's not what you meant, but that's how it can be interpreted by your words. I care about the raw number of dead people. Your answer is similar to those university representatives when they said that it's not anti-Semitic unless the violence is carried out, and basically they are physically attacked and murdered first. Then we can call it anti-Semitic. Also, from the river to the sea is 100% anti-Semitic. It is Hamas terrorist organization's #1 slogan in their documents, meaning annihilation of Jews from Israel. So you want it to happen first, and then it's anti-Semitic? This is like saying during World War I or World War II, when they were chanting against the Jews, these Nazis are not anti-Semitic until they actually shot them dead in the streets or sent them to concentration camps. If I go out and say, death to Muslims, does it mean I'm Islamophobic? Well, yes, I don't have to actually kill one to be called Islamophobic. I think this person may be a genuine ideologue. They actually think that by introducing nuance into this that I am endorsing genocide. This is preposterous. I'm sorry, absolutely preposterous. And if I say death to Muslims, then I am Islamophobic, is true. But from the river to the sea does not mention death. Now, the point about it being Hamas's slogan, yes, of course, that's how propaganda works. And yes, it is probably notable and may even have been on their minds that, well, we're not actually calling for death to Jews, are we? But, like I said, I gave my alternate context quite clearly. Shouldn't both peoples who have historic ties to the region have a self-determining and mostly contiguous state that accesses both the historic river and the Mediterranean Sea? Does that seem totally unreasonable? And after all, doesn't it seem like the only possible solution that was ever going to bring a lasting peace? I don't know. I can't think of a snappy name for that idea right now. Maybe someone can help me out here. So overall, what do you think of this poll? Do you think that my interlocutors made good points? Do you think they engaged with mine in good faith? Did I get too frosty in my response? Probably. I'll try to do better. And crucially, am I in fact a massive anti-Semite or a mere useful idiot? It is so hard to tell these days, but I have noticed that it's always good to label your opponents as evil and ignorant before you engage with your arguments. It saves a lot of time and thinking too. To close out, I'm going to go from the ridiculous to the sublime. I recently played the Talos Principle 2, and to my mind it is a beautiful experience that eclipses its already excellent predecessor. The game asks questions about how people should interact when potentially world-changing decisions are in play. And although of course it is a simplistic presentation overall, it nonetheless affected me with the sheer poignancy of its narrative, the humanity. And so, yes, I wear my bleeding heart on my sleeve. I don't know what life means to you, various commenters of the internet, and I am sorry if you think that my position lacks compassion for any particular group. We disagree on that, I'm afraid. But I am in this only for the grander expression of the human spirit, and every human life has a part to play in that. That's what human dignity means, and I thought that one of the few things that has taught us this lesson better than anything else was the Holocaust itself. Bye for now.